We're glad you could join us this evening. We have a very informative presentation for you tonight. This marks the beginning of college planning for your junior. This is an exciting time, but also can be a very anxiety-provoking time. That's why we start early. We start now because I'm sure many of you will be looking for, time over the vacations and over the summer to begin to, visit the college campuses. Before we get started, I'd like to go ahead and introduce the counselors who will be working with you and your student throughout this process from now and through next year. Down here on the end, we have all of our male counselors. We have Jason Lessard. Next to him is Connor Brosnan. And then next to Connor is Dave Breglio. We have our female counselors on this end for some reason. Andrea Hodgkin. And next to her is Becca Haberman. And next to her is Kate Mulcahy. And last but not least is Pam Mackey. So these are the people who are going to be working with your students. And I think they do a fantastic job working with our students and guiding them through the process. Because as I indicated already, it's an exciting time, but it also can be very anxiety-provoking. And so we'll oftentimes see students 1 minute who are extremely excited, and the next minute they're crying, because it's an emotional journey as you go through this process. But we're accustomed to this. How many of you this evening this is your first time going through this process? Okay, well, welcome. It's going to be a lot of fun, but I don't want you to worry because what we have this all mapped out for you, okay? So right now we're going to start, and we're going to focus primarily on, the initial stages tonight. And so we're going to talk some about testing and standardized testing and test prep. And then we're going to focus primarily on the search process and looking to find a fit. What is the right fit for your student? And then getting on those campuses and visiting those campuses. That should be your primary focus right now. On January 31st at 7:30 in the morning here in the auditorium, we will have another presentation. And I think this is one of our most informative presentations. We will be bringing 3 area admissions reps in to speak to the entire junior class as well as their parents about the admissions process. And they, we ask them a series of questions to prompt them about the process, and then we offer an opportunity for questions and answers. And I think it's a great time for our students to hear directly from the admissions counselors, what they're looking for from everything. They'll talk about testing, they'll talk about essays and teacher recs, they'll talk about course selection, which of course, as much as they want to go ahead and, only take a couple of elective courses in English, we're going to advise them otherwise. But they get to hear, all of that information directly from the admissions counselors. So I think that is a wonderful opportunity. Then we will spend time meeting individually with your students. So we do group workshops. So anytime all the information that we're presenting tonight to you, we're going into the classroom and presenting to your students. We will then meet individually with students because, of course, no one student is the same. So we need an opportunity to be able to kind of, gauge their interest and help them to, develop a potential list of schools to visit. So come next May, we'll have another presentation where we'll then begin to talk about what you can be doing over the summer. So many of our students have a lot going on. They take heavy course loads, they work, they participate in extracurriculars and athletics, and so we like to give them the information that they need in late spring so they can capitalize on some of that extra time they might have over the summer to prepare for the fall admissions process. So in May, we will go over all of that. We'll introduce students to the Common App. We'll talk to them about, we'll share the essay prompts with them. We'll talk about teacher recs and guidance counselor recs, okay? So we will go over all of that. Then we'll come back in the fall and we will have a senior night as well as senior workshops where we'll pull all of those pieces of the puzzle together and explain to you and your students how to go about executing, the application process and pulling all of those pieces together in the fall. Okay, so we have everything very well mapped out for you. So I share this all with you because it's my hope that this helps to reduce your overall anxiety. And, just to remind you that right now, the one thing that I think is the most important is to begin that search process and to begin to get out onto those campuses and get a sense of what is a good fit for your student. Now, we also recently, we went in and we did some workshops. We missed a couple workshops, and we do have a plan to make those up. So we'll be going back into the classroom and making up those workshops with students. We did recently update the Gpa and Naviance for all the students. And the GPA that is currently in Naviance is the GPA for grades 9 and 10. Final grades for any courses that your student has taken here at Algonquin. Now, we utilize that GPA, and you're going to see as the counselors are walking you through this process, we utilize that GPA as part of, the assessment process as to how your student might fare in the admissions process as a data point. Then in September, we will recalculate the GPA again, and that will include final grades for every course they've taken for 9th, 10th, and 11th grade, and that will be the GPA that we will report to the colleges. We will not recalculate the GPA again until after graduation. However, what we do send is we send report cards, and the colleges take their senior performance into consideration in the admissions process, okay? Now, you'll note that the one thing I didn't mention is rank, because we have eliminated, issuing of rank for our students. And, we had made the decision through our research. We did extensive research last year around, rank and its impact on students in the college admissions process, as well as, from a stress standpoint. And through our work, we came to realize that we were one of, one school left here in the Metro West area, highly ranking schools, the top 25 best of Boston, who was actually still ranking their students. And so given the caliber of our high school and the curriculum that we offer here, we determined through our research that it was detrimental, to our students to continue to rank them. And so it is our hope moving forward, we will not be ranking our students. And it is our hope that the colleges, the purpose of doing that is we want the colleges to read our students more holistically, okay? So at this point, the GPA has been updated, and we'll update it again in the fall, all right? So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Andrea Hodgkin, and she's going to start talking about testing.
I have really tall heels on, I just realized, so I gotta move this, okay. All right, so as Lisa said, I'm gonna talk about testing, which seems to be that dreaded rite of passage for teenagers who wanna go to college. So we're talking about a lot of things that can be anxiety provoking. Testing is just one of those things that you gotta get out of the way. So most of you already know that there are two major tests, SAT and ACT. If you look at page 3 of your workbook, there will be some description of those, but what you might not know about these tests is that these are used interchangeably. So at this time, colleges don't prefer one test over the other. Okay, so what are these tests? They are curriculum-based tests. The SAT is comprised of 2 main sections. It's a evidence-based reading, writing, and then a math section. Those are scored 200 through 800 each. There's also an optional writing section, which receives 3 scores ranging from 2 to 8. The ACT is comprised of 4 main sections, so that's an English, a reading, a math, and it also has a science section. There's also an essay section. So ACT, instead of the 200 through 800, it's actually scored 1 through 36, with the essay scored 2 through 12. So you saw that both those tests had optional writing sections. Even though they're optional, we are encouraging students to take the test with the writing section at least one time. And we say that because at this point, students don't know where they're going to be applying to colleges yet. Some colleges will require that that writing section is there. So just to cover all bases, at this point, we're encouraging the students take the test with the writing. So those are the main tests. There is another test that some colleges may require, and that is called the subject test. So that was formerly known as the SAT-2. So subject tests, they're 1 hour long exams. You can take 3 tests in one day. You just can't do them on the same day as an SAT. But these tests, they're really assessing your achievement, the student's achievement in these particular subject areas. So there's numerous subjects between like English literature, US history, world history, all the sciences, biochem, physics. There's also foreign language. And there's math. There's level 1 and level 2. I'm mentioning the subject tests, but the majority of our students will not need to take subject tests. I would say the more selective colleges may require the subject tests. So this is when your students are building their list. It's so important that they become the expert on what each college requires. So in terms of testing, do they require the test? Do they require subject tests? If so, is the college saying they want subject tests from 2 particular areas, like math and science, or is the college saying you can take 2 subject tests of your choice? So this is where I think you guys can really be helpful. I know we get a lot of questions from parents, how can I help my children through this process? I would say if you can help them stay organized, that is key. So maybe that is helping them keep track of all these requirements that we're going to be talking about. Okay, so when students should take these tests, when we start meeting individually with our juniors, so that's something we do throughout, like from now going forward through the spring, is we will have individual meetings with our juniors. And during that primary meeting, we will be talking about a testing plan. So we will help your students develop a plan for what makes sense for them in terms of taking their tests. So this plan might differ for each student, but in general, our students typically take the first SAT in either May or June, and then they would take the ACT in June. That's typically what our students here do. Once scores are released for both of those tests, you can actually compare them and see which test was a stronger test for your child. And then typically when they come back in the fall during their senior year, they will take the test again. They will take just one test, the preferred test. They don't need to go take both again because colleges will accept either of those. So that's an overview of the different tests. In terms of registering, if you turn to page 4 of your workbook, unlike PSAT, where you guys would have registered your students through total registration, which was done through Algonquin, all SAT and ACT registrations is done externally. So it's either through College Board for SAT, and then actstudent.org is where you would register for ACT. So the test dates and registration deadlines for those exams are on page 4. It also specifies the dates when Algonquin is a test site. So that's marked by an asterisk. It's important to pay attention to deadlines at this point because if a student misses a deadline, we can't call College Board or ACT and say, oh, can you take one more? That's not how it works. There's certain deadlines. The other thing, though, is you want to avoid late fees. You can see the cost for each of these tests. It does add up. So late fees is just going to, not be that great. But you also want to secure a seat at Algonquin for your student. And I say that because we're a test site, but we're a test site for anybody. It could be students from Westboro, Shrewsbury, Marlboro, any area, students can sign up to take the test here. So the earlier students do sign up for tests, they're more likely to get a seat here at Algonquin. So when students register for SAT and ACT, they will be given an option to send their test scores to colleges. At this point, we ask that you guys hold off on this. This is something that students will be able to take care of in the fall. Right now, you don't have a solid list of those schools that the student's applying to, nor do you know how the student's gonna do on these tests. So hold off for now. As Lisa said, we're gonna have workshops in the fall. So really early September, when we come back, we'll be meeting with the seniors and we will be meeting with you. And we're gonna go through that entire process of how you actually send scores to colleges. All right. So given that testing can cause so much stress, it's super important that students prepare. I think that's becoming familiar with the test. That's the one way of getting rid of some of that anxiety. So one of the best ways to prepare is actually through something called Khan Academy. That's Khan. Khan Academy is a free test prep service. They are partnered with College Board. So, and what's awesome with Khan Academy is it actually provides a personalized practice plan for each student, and it's based on how they did on their PSAT scores. So if your child took the PSAT in October, they can access their score report on College Board, and then they can link their scores to Khan Academy. Khan Academy will then pinpoint areas of weakness to develop a practice plan for each student. So it's a pretty cool way that each student, it's free and it's tailored to their needs. It assesses their strengths as well as those areas of weakness. There are several other additional ways students do prep for these exams. Some students do so independently, and maybe that's just going onto the College Board website or ACT website and doing test prep practice questions, or even getting a study manual, ordering a big book. We still have those in the CRC, which is our Career Resource Center. Algonquin will be offering a test prep class. We do this every year for juniors. I don't have the information of when it's going to be coming out, but that will be soon. You will be receiving a one-call as well as a Naviance email with the registration information. This is a very affordable option in comparison to a lot of the other places that do test prep classes. But because it's such a great class, seats are limited. There's not, we have probably 5 sessions of classes. So when you get that email, that one call, if your child is interested in doing this, they should register right away. And all registration is going to be done through the main office. So that registration information about the Algonquin class will be going out soon. There are other organizations in the area that offer test prep for both SAT and ACT. Those are pricier. And then we also have lists of private tutors. Sometimes I think students might want to just work individually with somebody, and maybe they see that they looked at their PSAT scores and they're like, wow, I did great on the math section, but I'm really having a hard time with that reading section. So maybe a tutor would make sense to just focus on that particular area. All right, so that's test prep. Before I do move on, I do want to say that standardized tests, they are, I know, a stressful thing. They're also not the best indicator of how a student will do in college, and more colleges do understand that. So if you go back to page 3, at the very bottom, there's a website. It's called fairtest.org. And if you go to that website, it's going to list over 900 colleges and universities that do not use the SAT or ACT to make admissions decisions for a substantial number of their applicants. So when you go to that website, you're going to notice there are so many top-tier schools, some of the top-tier liberal arts schools, national universities, regional universities, and top-tier regional colleges are on that list. So it is a really good thing to check out if a student feels like their test really isn't a good indication of how they do academically. And that's something when we meet with the students, we'll be able to look at the schools as well for them. Okay, so I'm going to pass this on to Pam Mackey. And I think we're going to do some Naviance stuff. Let's see if I can get this to work.
Hello? Okay, awesome. Hi, everybody. My name's Pam. I'm going to be walking us through the Algonquin website and doing a quick introduction to Naviance, which is our college counseling tool. Under academics, on the homepage right here, you're going to click on guidance, and that's going to bring you to our homepage. And I'm just going to cover a few things that are on here. If you click on course of study, this right here is going to show you where the program of studies is going to be. We have course selection coming up in a couple months, and that will be updated as soon as it is completed. And if you scroll down, you can actually see the graduation requirements. We do review this with students and on our own to make sure that they're all on track to graduate, but we ask that kids kind of take a look at it too, make sure that they've got economics, gym every year, a fine and applied art also. We're going to go now over to course selection. So Kate Mulcahy's going to talk about this, but more detail is going to be on this page for you to review everything that she said. A couple things to keep in mind. Course selection is going to begin on March 5th, and it will end on March 16th. Again, Kate's going to chat about that in a little bit. During our next workshop with the juniors, which is the week of February 5th, it's actually that Monday, the day after the Super Bowl, we are going to review the course requirements in detail with them and talk to them about course selection. The last thing I want to cover on this side here is job postings. This is relatively new to the website. A lot of times we get kids that come down, hey, I'm looking for a job, I'm looking for community service. Miss Hutchins in the CRC has been updating this page. So if your student is looking for any sort of opportunity, community service or job, we do keep this updated as people in the community contact us. All right, so if you click on guidance home, awesome. And then junior info, there's a couple more things under here. We'll have the workbook that we gave you guys. We're going to update that. We'll put that up there for you. Course requirements for juniors is on there too. Any other sort of videos or updates of workbooks or anything will show up in that section also. And then testing info. Everything that Andrea just covered. So PSAT, that's going to give you, you must have gotten the results back, hopefully. If you haven't yet, we would suggest you contact College Board. But this will provide information on how to interpret the PSATs. The SAT and ACT link are up here also, so if you're looking to sign up, then you can go ahead and use our website to get there. Test optional schools, which Andrea was talking about, which is a great list. That's up there also. And then APs, which are coming up in May, and signups for those. More information's coming out. I think it's beginning of March. That will take you on where to sign up for that. But we will have information for you guys for that. Okay. So the Naviance website. So we are going to be using this from here on out with the kids. Basically, it's going to help them with exploring careers, exploring their personality type. We covered that with them last year. And this year, we're going to be using it for college search. This is going to be where we ask the students to keep their list so that they can see it on there, and we can see it on there, and you guys can see it on there also. So we'll be using it extensively, and then we actually use it senior year also to send everything, but we'll cover that with you guys in the fall of next year. When you first log in, we'll have several messages on here. We'll keep this updated for you. So, for example, right now we've got, the workshops are underway, and GPAs are uploaded, and that PSAT scores are on there. So you might want to just check that out when you first get in there. First thing we're asking kids to do when they log in is to go under the About Me tab, and then if you scroll down, under Official Things, you're going to click on Profile. So the first thing we're asking kids to do is to double check their email on here. Colleges are going to be using email to chat with you, with your students, with your children. So we're asking them to have like an adult email, not anything from middle school like mylittlepony@hotmail.com, something like their first name and their last name, maybe a number or something like that. So we're asking them to update that. We're also asking them to update your email to make sure that your email is up to date on there, so that we can reach out to you guys through Naviance with guidance news. If you do not have an account yet, so we sent some information out last year, but if you're looking at this and this is all new to you, that's totally fine. We're going to send out activation codes probably tomorrow or early next week for you, and then you'll be able to get into your account. So it'll be the activation code, and we'll give you directions on how to get onto your profile, or your account rather. If you have an active account, you can just ignore that email. If you have an older child who's gone through this process before and you already have an account, that's awesome. We can actually link it. So you can shoot your kid's guidance counselor an email, and we'll go in and we can link the students together. Okay, lastly on the profile, Lisa had mentioned GPA. That's going to be down there right there. That's the weighted GPA. As she said, it's 9th and 10th grade, final year grades. We won't be updating it until the end of this year, going into the fall of next year, and that will be the GPA that we send to the colleges. Okay. All right, so I'm going to quickly cover the things that we did last year. In the 10th grade, we covered career searches with the students, and we also did the Myers-Briggs, which maybe you're familiar with, maybe you've taken it, the kids have done it. So you're gonna go under careers, thank you. And just to show you where this information is, the do what you are is what I'm talking about. It's based on the Myers-Briggs, but it's a little bit more norm to the kids, so it asks questions like, would you rather go out and hang out with a bunch of friends at a party, or would you rather stay in and maybe watch a movie with a couple friends? So we had the kids run through that. We can certainly reset it for them if they didn't take it seriously or if they want to take it again. The cool thing about that is within that information, when they look at it, they can see careers that match up with that personality type. So that's a neat way. If they're not really sure what they want to major in, it's completely fine. They can always go undecided. However, this will give them a clue as to some things they might want to check out. The other thing on there is the career interest profile, and that's mostly just career information on there. So again, something that the kids can take a look at if they're unsure about what they want to major in. Okay, that does it for me. Dave's going to be up next, and he's going to walk you guys through a college search. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you for coming. So the goal for the college search, and Naviance has a great college search engine that we can use. To find that, you're going to go to the colleges tab up top, and then you're going to go down to college research, and there's a couple different options you can use. Myself and most of the guidance counselors use the college search tab right here. It's probably the cleanest, the most user-friendly. So the goal for this is there's thousands of colleges out there, and we want our kids to somehow limit from those thousands of colleges they can research down to a manageable number that they feel connected with, that they're excited to send in applications to coming senior year. So this search engine helps us dwindle down that number. So the first thing we look at is there's going to be 2-year or 4-year options. The 2-year options are going to be your community colleges, students who are looking to study a possible vocation, some students who are going to the community college will earn that associate's degree, that 2-year degree, and then decide to transfer on to a 4-year school. A majority of our students go ahead and usually apply for a 4-year college, so that's what we're going to click there. After that is public and private. So the public schools in Massachusetts are going to be the UMass system, Worcester State, Framingham State, Bridgewater State, Salem State, a couple others I'm missing right now. But this public schools are funded through Massachusetts through taxpayer money and through tuition. The private colleges across the United States are funded through tuition and through investments, through donations. The public schools for Massachusetts give a tuition break for Massachusetts kids to apply there. So if you apply to UMass Amherst as a Northborough, Southborough student, it will be cheaper for you if you attend than someone from Connecticut or New Hampshire or Vermont. The private institutions sticker price tends to be a little higher sometimes, but they also a lot of times give better financial aid, maybe a little more scholarship or grant money if they can. So for this one, we're going to keep no preference for now. Co-ed, we'll click that button. If you click all male, there'll be about 2 schools that come up, and all female will be about 3, so we'll stay with co-ed. And then the next option is the type of surrounding that you want the campus to be in. And there's a lot of different campus settings. So if you look up in Boston, you could go look at BU, which would be a city campus, and then 3 miles down the road at Boston College, which are similar competitive schools. That's going to be a more suburban campus with a totally different campus feel. So the real only way your student's going to figure out what is the right campus type for them to be at for the next 4 years of their life is they have to go out and visit these schools. That's super important for them to be on campus, see the schools for themselves, get the feel of walking around the local neighborhood, what's going to be the best fit for them. So for this search, we'll look at large city, small city, large town, small town. We don't want to be out in the sticks and rural, so we're okay with that. And then below there, they have a lot of options for if you want to apply to a religious affiliated school, but we're going to skip through that for now. Next, it brings you to what part of the country are you feeling comfortable looking or researching schools. So up top, you can actually put in a range of how long you are willing to travel to go to this school. So if you want to put in 180, 240 miles that you feel comfortable and your student feels comfortable traveling, you can go about it this way, or you can pick certain regions or states throughout the country. So a lot of times early college planning with our juniors, it's freezing cold. They're all asking us to look in Florida and out in Hawaii and California and that type of stuff. Probably this year is going to be a lot of that, but as it warms up and we get in refining our list, they are more comfortable looking back at home and they're okay staying in New England. So for now, we're going to look at New England, and let's say we have grandparents in Michigan, so we want to look in Michigan too. So now they give you the option for the size of the school you're looking at. And the size of the school is really important because it's going to really have the feel of the school. It's a lot of times dependent on the size of the school. So smaller schools, you're going to have those smaller class sizes. You usually have a chance to be more connected with your professors. Larger schools are going to have more of that competitive athletics. You're going to have larger class sizes. You may have more chances for research. Sometimes the smaller schools, you have more options for leadership opportunities. So it's really what's the best fit for your student. For this search, let's go with 2,000 to 5,000, 5,000 to 10,000, and 10,000 to 15. So your student knows maybe they want something that's a little bigger than Algonquin, but they're not as comfortable at a large university like a Central Florida that could have 55,000 kids at it. And then Andrew, you could go to the next one from here. This one offers the percent accepted to the college. For the initial searches, I usually have the kids just click on no preference for this. As they do continuous searches, they can start to refine this a little bit. If you go to less than 25, that's going to be more of your Ivy League schools, the really super competitive colleges. But for that initial search, I will usually like to keep it a little more broad and see what's available, so we'll keep that no preference for now. So this option trips kids up a little bit sometimes because they give all these different sports available at the school. There is no varsity skydiving team, even though it's listed up here. There's no scuba diving teams that I know about. So this isn't intramural sports. This is sports that kids want to play at the collegiate level. So if you know that you played soccer for the last 4 years here, you're really connected with the soccer program, you want to see if you have the ability to play at the college level, then I would click soccer, make sure the college has a soccer team, and then you can pick what division that you want to play at. So maybe you're a little unsure where your talents are right now, so you want to keep your options open, so we'll keep Division 1, 2, and 3 on the list. So if you look at that number up top, it says number of matches 76. When this started, there was about 5,000 colleges in this overall search. And just from those location, number of students, athletics, now we're down to 76 available options. This here now lets you put in that specific major your student may be interested in applying to. So let's say your kid is in AP Economics now, is loving the curriculum. They feel that economics is going to be a passion of theirs moving forward, and they really want to study it at the college level. They want to make sure that this college has economics as an option. So we'll go for general economics right there. You can type in that major, you can select what you want, and then select it down to the major section here, and this is going to make sure that this college has your student selected major available. So you can go ahead and show matches, Andrea. Beyond that, there's a couple other tabs that you can click on. One of them is if your student wants to maybe look into the ROTC. If there's a couple other clubs or programs they may be interested in, like marching band or drama or theater, and they have some tabs for that. But you always want to follow up with the college themselves to make sure that the information on Naviance is correct. So right now we have 56 colleges that match that criteria. So that criteria looks like 4-year co-ed, Michigan and New England, from 2,000 to 15,000 kids, the campus surrounding, sports is soccer, and then the 3 divisions that they offer, and the general economics major, okay? When this 56 number of schools pop up, there's ways to reorganize that list. So if you go to select info, you can look at it from the percent accepted. So now you can see that 6% of students got into Yale, 6% got into Harvard, but if we scroll down, some of the schools that are a little more less competitive, like a Roger Williams have accepted 78% of the students. So there's a wide range available. You can also select to organize it by the state that the school is in. So now we have it listed from Connecticut to Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Vermont, all the way down to Michigan, Maine. So there's a way to play with this list to make it a little more manageable when you're looking through it. When we're doing searches with our students, and we'll do them one-on-one in our office, you guys can do it at home with them. You don't want to have to start over every single time you do another search. So there's a way to actually save this search. So you click Save Search, and then you can name it something that's connected with that search. So this was an economics major with New England and Michigan as the 2 locations. So if you save it that way, next time you log on, that search is going to be saved for you so you can review that college list. So from here, maybe there's a couple schools that popped up on that list that was maybe already on your student's radar, on your radar, that you want to research a little bit more. There's a way for you to pick that individual college and add it to a hand-picked list. So for this one, we're going to pick Assumption College, Boston College, and Worcester State down below. So now up top, they are going to show up in this hand-picked list. And then you're going to click on Add to Colleges I'm Thinking About. Now they appear on the Colleges I'm Thinking About website. Oh, we missed one. So they show up on the Colleges I'm Thinking About page. Every time you log back into Naviance, these colleges that you asked for Colleges I'm Thinking About will be saved on this list, will allow you to do some future research on it. You can add to this list as you're going. You can take some schools away. But this is really the working list for the colleges your students may start going to visit, doing some online research about, contacting the admissions office. But this should be a working list, taking schools away over the next coming months. These are the schools that maybe you will be going on college tours for. So Connor Brosnan now is going to come up and he's going to review some of those colleges on the Colleges I'm Looking At list. College I'm Thinking About list.
So as Dave was just saying, we look at this as kind of like the ever-evolving list of colleges that your kids are kind of considering, thinking about. A great place to kind of start doing some research is right here on Naviance. There's some very basic information you can get off Naviance. So say, for example, we want to check out Worcester State. If you click on Worcester State, it'll bring you to a page that has, at the top, it has some pretty pictures. Some of these colleges have videos. You can kind of see the campus. It's kind of a marketing video they put on there. But some of the other stuff you'll see on here is the average net price, the graduation rate, how many kids graduate within 6 years. It's kind of important to know that. The acceptance rate, how many kids are actually getting into that college that apply. You'll see one thing on here, the college overlaps. We find this to be kind of useful. So this basically gives you a list of kids that applied to Worcester State from Algonquin. What other colleges did they also apply to? So as you'll see, when you click on Learn More, the other colleges that kids from Algonquin also applied to were Framingham State, Westfield, UMass. As you can see, it's a lot of state schools because Worcester State is a state university, obviously. If we go back to the college profile, there'll be some other basic information. As you go down, they have the website. And then if you go down to, let's go up a little bit. So right here, some quick facts, how many kids go to the school, what is the student to faculty ratio. I think that undergraduate enrollment might not be correct, to be honest with you. 794 seems a little low for Worcester State to me, but maybe that's just me. They have the degrees offered, so they have bachelor's, master's degree. It'll list whether they have a doctorate degree or not. As we go down again, you can see how you compare with other students from your high school who have been accepted to Worcester State. So the average GPA from Algonquin is a 3.34, where Crystal Ball, our student that we're using right now, has a 3.588, which is why she's in the green. Green usually means good, that you're above the average accepted GPA from kids from Algonquin that got into Worcester State over the past 3 years. SAT scores, you can see the average was 1079. Again, Crystal Ball is above that. ACTs, she's right on. And then overall average, good. So they're basically kind of giving you like a, this isn't an exact science, but they're kind of saying, yeah, you looks pretty good right now. If you kind of keep doing what you're doing, there's a good chance you'll get into Worcester State based on the stats that we have in our system. And if you keep going down, So these are just the national averages. So as you guys are kind of looking, I know a lot of students come down, they say, oh, I need my GPA out of a 4.0 scale. We basically, and I'm going to show you a graph in a little bit that kind of hits this point home a little more, but we go off more what the kids from Algonquin, what their GPAs have been, what their SAT scores, and whether they've got in or not. It's a lot easier to compare yourself to kids from our building versus kids from Indiana or kids from Framingham even. So I'll show you a graph that's really helpful in a little bit in terms of, kind of determining your chances of getting into a school or not. So if we go to studies as the next tab. So studies is going to be a list of all the different majors offered at that college. So we are looking at bachelor's degrees. So we'll click on bachelor's. And it's going to give you a long-running list of all the different majors offered at Worcester State. If you're looking through this list and say you want to look at computer science as a major you're really interested in, we don't have to click on it now, but if you click on computer science, it's going to give you a list of every college in the United States that offers computer science. So as you can imagine, there's probably going to be about 800 colleges that pop up under computer science. So it's just another way to kind of search by major if you'd like. Next one is student life. So student life, again, gives you some basic information. School size, very small. Again, I disagree with that. Nearest city, Worcester. How far is it from Algonquin? It's 11 miles. Percent of students living on campus, 27%. So that's really important. So a school like Worcester State, that might not be a big deal because they live pretty close to home, right? If they're looking at a school in Iowa, for example, and it says 10% of kids live on campus, that might be a bit concerning. That might be something you want to look into a little bit more if you want to see if kids are actually living in apartments off campus or if most of those kids are commuting to the school. And then they give you a bunch of data just in terms of, the demographics at the school. Again, they give you some housing. So here they have the student organizations and services. So these are different clubs available. So as you can see, they offer a whole variety of things at Worcester State. You can go to athletics. Again, Dave was kind of showing us a breakdown of how to search for this, but this will show you what division they have. Are they in the NCAA? Do they have varsity, club, intramural? If you go to services, it just gives you a breakdown of the different accommodations that they might offer there. They have tutoring centers, or they have writing centers. And then computing resources, we don't normally play with this too much, but the number of computer labs they actually have on campus just gives you an idea of how much money they're putting into technology at that school. The next tab is the one that we spend the most time on, and a lot of your students have probably already started playing around with, is the admissions tab. So if you go to the admissions tab, you'll see right here, applications from your high school to Worcester State University. So it gives us the past 3 years. So in 2015, we had 38 kids accepted, or 23 accepted. We had 9 enrolled. You can see that we've done pretty well at Worcester State over the past few years. So then if we go down further, this is the graph that I was talking about before. So on the vertical axis there, I don't remember, I think it's the y-axis maybe. My math's a little iffy, but that's going to be your GPA. So again, this is your GPA based off your freshman and sophomore years. That will be updated again at the end of this year. So they'll then include your freshman, sophomore, and junior years. And then the bottom axis is, for most of your students, is going to be the PSAT scores that they currently have. Some of your students might have taken the SATs yet already, so it could be their SAT scores. As SAT and ACT scores come in, we update this, and then that will change. So you're going to show up, or your student's going to show up, not you. Your student's going to show up as a little blue mark on there somewhere based on their GPA and their test scores that we have currently. And then you'll see surrounding your student, there's a bunch of green check marks with Worcester State. The green check marks are good. That means the student got in. So the X's obviously mean the student, unfortunately, did not get in. They got denied. So as you're looking at these graphs, again, it just kind of gives you a basic idea. This isn't an exact science. But if you're looking at this graph, you could say, okay, crystal ball kind of falls right smack in the middle of the greens. She's only a junior. She's doing really well this year. Her GPA might go up a little bit. We're hoping her test scores might go up a little bit as well. This probably looks like a pretty safe bet for her. Chances are she's going to get in. And this is where we want you guys to kind of start thinking about the whole idea of a reach versus a match versus a safety. So in my eyes, this is kind of a safety type school. There's really pretty good chance she's going to get in. Things obviously can happen. That she might apply to a specific program like nursing or something, what's a little more competitive. That could change things, that could skew things. But generally, it looks pretty good for crystal ball at Worcester State. So as your students are kind of going through, and I think a lot of kids when they first start looking, this is something that always comes up. They'll look at these schools that they hear a lot about, like BC and Holy Cross and Notre Dame, just because they've seen them on TV, and they're all excited about it. They're looking at their websites, and then we pull up the graphs, and unfortunately, their little blue mark is kind of down in the reds. And again, we always tell kids it's okay to apply to a few of those schools. We call those reach schools. We can actually pull one up now if you want, Andrea. Can you show them Boston College real quick? So for crystal ball, Boston College would be a reach type school. Excuse me. So as you can see, she's kind of down there, mostly in the reds. The greens are a little further away from her on this one. So again, if she goes to BC, she visits it, she loves it, she falls in love. She thinks it's the perfect place for her. That's up to you guys. If you guys want to spend the $70 to apply, you're more than welcome to. But we just always want to be realistic with our students that, you can definitely apply, see what happens. You can't get in unless you apply right. But chances are it's not looking too good based on our current information. Every now and then you will see a random little green mark down there. That does happen. It kind of gives kids hope. That could be an athlete. That could be the grandfather bought the new library. That could be a whole host of things. But generally, again, these are fairly accurate. And then, I know Assumption didn't come up, but for crystal ball, a school like Assumption might be more of like a match type school where she kind of falls like right there. Again, things happen. She might not get in, but it's looking fairly good. Her credentials kind of match up with what Assumption's looking for. The last tab there, actually, if you go down a little bit, you'll see they have the application requirements here. This kind of just gives you an idea of like what they're going to need when they do apply as seniors, so you don't have to worry about this too much right now. One of the things you might want to look at here is, Andrea was talking about the SAT subject test. Those usually will be listed under there, but Jason will show us as well. You always want to kind of double check the websites to make sure it's listed on there as well. And then this talks about like what they're looking at. So obviously, we'll get into this more with your students as we go forward. It's not all just academics, it's not all GPA and test scores. There are other things that go into this, such as recommendations and extracurricular activities and things like that, which we will talk about later. And then it gives you the application deadlines, which you do not need to worry about at this time. The last tab, which we're not going to get into too much because it's a little misleading, is the cost. This kind of gives you the actual cost of the school. They tried to be kind of fancy with it in terms of what your income is and what you should be paying, but that's not always completely accurate, so I wouldn't go by this. One thing just about in terms of the cost of school while you're looking at colleges, I personally think it's really important to be very upfront with your students. Every family has different, financial abilities. If your student's only looking at schools that cost $75,000 a year and they fall in love with Northeastern and Boston College, and that's just not realistic for your family, this is a good time to kind of start having that conversation. I think all of us always recommend that our students apply to like at least one state school just for kind of financial backup because state schools are a little bit cheaper, more affordable. And also it's not a bad idea to, as you're looking at those graphs, if your student is in one of those kind of safety type situations where maybe their GPA and test scores are well above what's normally accepted at that school, those are the kind of schools that might give your students some aid. They might throw some money your way. So it's always not a bad idea, either to kind of look at some schools where you're kind of above what they're looking for on a general basis because you might get money possibly. So I think now Jason Lassard is going to actually go into the websites and kind of show us how to start looking through those and navigating the websites.
All right, so now we've created a list on Naviance. So if we go back to our colleges we're thinking about, we'll go that way. So ideally, if I'm meeting with one of my students, I'm hoping that their list has more than 2 schools on it at this point. Oh, okay. So hopefully there's more than 2 colleges on the thinking about list. This student, as Connor just mentioned, so we have these 2 schools on here. We just looked at BC and we looked at Worcester State. Worcester State seems like an appropriate fit academically, so that's a school that I would feel confident that student could get into. What I would say now is before making that trip out to campus, we want to check a few things, like check to make sure that school does indeed have the major. So we want to go on their website and take a look. So we can actually scroll to the right. An easy way to do it is there's www, and that will connect you directly to the website. So now we're right at Worcester State's homepage. So I also want to mention that there are a lot of college websites out there. They're obviously all going to be different. So as I go through this will apply for Worcester State, obviously, and there's going to be some similarities, but they're not going to be exactly the same. So this is also potentially your child's first impression of the school itself. So it's important for them to take their time, explore, and kind of take a look at this school. Websites are also really useful if the school is far from home. Maybe it's really hard to visit. So this is a great portal or great view into what that school is really like. I'm positive your child can navigate a website, but I'm going to go through this, and we're going to take a look at a few tabs that I recommend, and we all recommend that the students really explore at home. So the first tab, we have academics, and we won't click it quite yet, but we have academics, and that's going to focus really on things like the majors, the classes, sort of maybe what's going on in their field, like what are professors doing. That's really exciting. Then we have the admissions tab. That's going to tell us a lot about the school, about the cost, about what it takes to get into the school, what kind of students do they look for. And then we have life at WSU. This is one that's often overlooked by students, and I really think they should take the time to explore this for any university that they're looking at. Because this can tell them about the events on campus and all the different things that the school might offer. And maybe they have bands coming to the school, like in concerts and all sorts of things that makes it fun to be on campus. Because if they have fun at school, they enjoy their clubs and activities, they're going to love it more, and they're going to be more invested into the university that they choose. So first, we're going to look at the admissions tab. So we'll click on that, and then what we're going to do is we're actually going to click on this Visit Us. So we're assuming we do want to do a visit, so we'll click on Visit Us, and we'll scroll down a little bit. And we see campus tours right there. So it's pretty straightforward and easy. So if we want to make a visit, we can easily schedule a tour, and we can click right on that. So tours, just to keep in mind, they're typically 60 to 90 minutes. A student is usually the tour guide. I was a tour guide when I was in college, and they'll walk you around campus and tell you all about the school. Now, some schools and most schools offer an information session before you go on that tour. Now, the students can all be great, but the information sessions are typically done by the admissions counselors. Now, the admissions counselors can give you all that data, those facts about the school, really what's important, the cost, the retention rates. So they'll go through a presentation before the tour gets off, ask if you have any questions, and then send you off to see the campus with the tour guide. So I highly, highly recommend that you do that information session before the tour. So as we go through here, we could pick a date. So we did, where are we at? February vacations. So we picked a date around February break, which is great. It's a good time to see schools because the kids are obviously out of high school, so they have a break. But at the same time, the kids at Worcester State are not on break. So they get to see what campus is like with people there, what are the kids doing, kind of the feel and the energy of the campus. So this one's pretty simple. So we can simply pick, we want to make sure we have an information session, so we can click on a time. All you have to do is put in your name, the number of people coming, date of birth, your address, zip code, etc., phone number. I guess it's not so simple. and then you just keep filling it out and on. And pretty soon they have all your information, and then you'll register, and you'll be registered for that tour, and you should receive a confirmation email. So that's kind of a quick way. A lot of college websites right on their homepage, they'll have a big and bold thing that says "Visit Us" or "Go on a tour," and you can click on that. I'd say probably 80% of the websites out there do that. Worcester State did do it on the very homepage as well, so that's another way to easily access a tour. But I encourage the kids to kind of dig through and look at some additional information on there. Just a quick few things that aren't on Worcester State's webpage. Some schools do offer interviews, and that will be listed on the website, especially under admissions, so they want to check. Is an interview required? Is it optional? If it's optional, we definitely encourage it. They can get their meet their admissions counselor potentially before the tour. It depends how the school does it. Sometimes it might be with an alum, and they might meet the alum. A lot of my students have told me, oh, I've met them at like a Starbucks or somewhere nearby, and we kind of did like an informal interview, and they take some notes, and they get to know a little bit more about the school as well through doing the interview, and it shows a lot of interest. Also, I was on a couple of websites before this presentation, and I came across a surprising number of schools that also do overnight visits. So it's especially for those students who maybe already did a visit, did a tour, an information session, and then, you know, they applied and they're narrowing it down between a few schools they've been accepted to. They can actually do an overnight visit, stay with a student, and then they can even see a class. So if they want to go and do like an in-depth tour, it's a great experience to really get a feel for what campus is like. So right now, sorry, I skipped ahead. So we scheduled the tour already. So what we're gonna do is we're actually gonna go through and get a snapshot of campus. Every website is created a little bit differently, and this one is not the best virtual tour, but if we click on virtual tour, it gives us an overview of campus, and so we can start exploring, and it shows us the buildings. So a lot of them, it's literally a virtual tour that walks you through. And some of them, you can even walk through, you can click on a building, and a student pops up out of nowhere, and they'll start telling you all about the building. Worcester State is not quite there yet, but we can click on a building, and you can actually get details. So sure, we can click on Shaughnessy Administration, exciting stuff. And we can look at the admin building, and then we can see the inside, and it gives an in-depth description of what happens at that building. So that's where we'll find the admissions department. So that's where we want to be if we go into admissions. So that's their virtual tour, their version. Again, you'll find some maybe a little bit more exciting ones out there, but this still does the job. At the end of the day, I think this really reflects that the virtual tour does not equal an actual tour. So no matter what your student tells, oh, I went on the virtual tour, I saw it all, it's definitely the school for me. That does not equal going on an actual tour and standing on campus. So I'm gonna fly through the rest of the admissions section here. So we can click on undergraduate admissions, and if we scroll down to first year students right there, we can click on that. And this gives us a nice overview of what is needed to apply to the school. So if we scroll down some, you can see all the different things that they need from the school. And you can see the first year admission deadlines are right there. So it tells them when the deadlines will be due. If we scroll down a little bit more, you can see the first year admission criteria. So this is a great one for students to look at because this tells them what do you need in order to go to Worcester State. So they need 2 years of foreign language. They need 4 years of math to go to Worcester State. So these requirements for different institutions might be different than the graduation requirements that we have here. So this is something they'd want to look at. We can scroll down a little bit more. It gives you the GPA averages, SAT scores, so you can sort of see what they're looking for. Now keep in mind, and this happens all the time, but a student might come into the office and say, this is great. My GPA is 3.7, and they're looking for the average acceptance of a 3.6. Our GPA is on a 5 scale. Most GPAs recorded by colleges, so if their average acceptance is on a 4 scale. So those numbers don't exactly align. So a 3.6 on a 4 scale is more likely like an A- student as a whole, versus a 3.6 at Algonquin, depending on how many honors classes you take. That could vary quite differently. So, so I know the admissions part, there's also the test optional. Worcester State changed it this year, so you can see if the school is test optional. And as of 2018 and beyond, test scores are now test optional. You do want to investigate that further. We won't go into it right now, but I did take a look. If you learn more and look at all the details, if you choose not to submit your test, you are no longer considered for merit scholarships at Worcester State. So if you do not submit that SAT, even though it's test optional, you still can get into the institution, but now you might not be considered for a scholarship. So that's something you want to look at when going through a bunch of different websites. Oh, it's test optional, that's great. But will that actually hurt your chances of getting a potential scholarship? And in this case, it might. So they want to talk to their guidance counselor if they're thinking about not sending a test score. So we can scroll up. The admissions part is not the most glamorous piece of it. So we'll go into the academics, which is a lot more exciting. So we can click on the academics tab, and we said we were looking to be an econ major, so we can actually click on majors and minors and take a look at what their econ program is like. So if we scroll down a little bit more, they actually have all of their majors listed right here, and then we can find economics. And when we click on it, Worcester State, I think, does a really good job. They give you an overview of what the program looks like, the requirements. So it looks like if you're accepted into the school, you have to take these courses and get a certain grades to even be accepted into that program. You can take it next step. You can look at the faculty on that tab. Sometimes you can see that the professors might be doing some fun and exciting things, and take a look at their profiles and what are they currently doing. You can look at the courses. Now this is a really good one, so you can go through and you can see all the different classes that they have in their business program. So if someone's truly interested in business, but they might not be sure exactly what field of business, you can see that they have a lot of different classes. Where some schools, if they only really have a marketing major, they might only have some marketing classes available, and they might not have a wide range of administration classes, economics classes, marketing classes. So you can sort of see what they do have. And then the programs itself, if you click on that, it shows a wide variety of business programs. Like if you look at the 4+1, they offer a program where you don't have to click it, but they offer a program where you can get your master's in 5 years, a master's in business administration. So for now, we can click on the business administration major, and then this will actually break down everything you need to do to get that 4-year degree. So you can take a look at all these classes. You can see a timeline, what's it look like over my 4 years, and you can kind of plan everything out and see what's needed. So it's kind of a neat feature that they have there. So the last part of academics that's important to note would be academic resources. So if we go back to the academics tab, perfect, thank you. So students often ask us sometimes, or parents and families, about supports that might be available at a college. And this section talks about everything from honors opportunities, so the honors college, to student accessibility, and available services that the college might offer. So this is a great place, especially if you're interested in any of those things. You can look at it before you go on a tour, and then you can kind of get some information. When you're on the tour, you can ask about some of these programs that the schools have to offer when you're there. So last but not least, we'll go to life at Worcester State. And again, getting involved on campus is the best way to ensure that you're not only getting the most out of the school, but also making sure that you're really enjoying your time there, that they're invested in the school. So athletics, we won't click on all these tabs, but athletics, you can connect right to all the different sports that they offer. It's a great way, too, if you're interested in participating, like Dave mentioned, that maybe we want to play soccer. We'll have the soccer coach's name. We could send them an email, see what they want. Maybe they want some tape. Also, maybe you're just interested in spectating. So maybe you want to go, take it a step further and go see a game and see when they're playing and go down to Worcester State. It's not that far from here. You can connect right to the bookstore, get apparel, all that fun stuff. But we'll go to student involvement because see what's going on at campus. So when we click on student involvement, if we scroll down a little bit, you can see there's the student center, which is they have a wide variety of events that happen there, and they'll kind of go in depth. And for instance, in March, the econ or the finance students will do your taxes for you. So you can bring your taxes in, and those students will do that. So there's a lot of fun stuff. But most importantly, I think if we click on the involvement calendar, you can get a snapshot of everything going on campus. So I think this is one of the parts students should really explore and sort of see what does this school have to offer that's not just part of the academics. So it's sort of they want to balance that life. They want to make sure the academic piece is there 100%, but they also want to make sure there's some fun things that they like to be involved in. So you can see all the different types of things that they have going on. And if we clicked on student organizations, you can actually see all the different kinds of clubs that they offer at the school as well. So make sure some of those things interest them. It's a great thing to look up before the tours so they can ask about a couple different clubs, ask about a couple different activities as well. So I feel like any website we could kind of get lost in and spend a lot of time on it, but I think in reality, we just went through this in about 10 minutes, and your students could go through a website fairly quickly, kind of make sure they have all those things that they need, and go on to the next one. But they want to check them all out. So the last thing we're going to do is one piece that's pretty important, is go under the admissions tab, and we'll click Undergraduate Admissions. And what we can do, if we scroll down on the left, you'll see something that says Request Info. So if we're really interested, we just navigated this website, we really liked what we saw, Worcester State can start sending you information. And it can be, they're going to ask you your interest, and they're going to ask about your potential major. So now they'll send you information specific for you, things you'll want to know about. So what I suggest you do is buy some sort of binder holder, so when you get all this mail coming to the house, that you start to organize it. It's especially useful too when you start to go on tours, which Becca's going to talk about. And when you take notes, you'll definitely want to have everything organized. So here's Becca.
How y'all doing? Good. I bet you didn't know how exciting Worcester State was, huh? How many of you, when you were looking at colleges, you had one of those big books that you just sort of looked at and then said, okay, I'll go there, and that was it? It sort of certainly has changed a lot since my day. I'm not good at reading or taking notes, but on page 11 and 12, we give you guys about visiting schools certain questions to ask while you're doing a tour, while you're looking around on the school. Jason went over how you set up to visit a school. I had two sons who came through Algonquin, both very different in terms of what they were looking at. I found very quickly that there was no way we could visit more than 2 schools in one day. There was one day where we planned 3 schools, and between getting lost, getting hungry, and yelling at each other, we decided, yeah, we're just going to do 2. If one of the reasons why we start this process now is to give you guys time during February vacation, on a Saturday in the winter, best time to go up to, say, Burlington, Vermont, and go look at UVM. Don't look at UVM in the summer when it's gorgeous and you can walk around and you're in shorts and a t-shirt. Go up now when they have like 6 feet of snow, because that's when your child will be at that university. So planning it out, really setting up a time to go look at that school, and if you're not rushed, if you're not running from one school to the next to get to that information session, to walk on that tour, it gives you time to really spend on that campus. The information sessions are great. After about the 4th information session, you will realize they all sound about the same. Everybody's got a GPA of a B plus, an A, because that's what they're going to tell you. But they will give you information that you might not know. When we went up with my younger son to UVM, all of a sudden he wanted to become a philosophy major because a philosophy professor spoke. And then we went to visit this philosophy professor, and he was like, this is awesome. I can sit and twiddle my thumb and think about things all day long. So just on an aside note, my son, who's 25, has decided to retire, and he is right now in Malaysia on a beach on an island doing exactly what he wanted to do, even though he never became a philosophy major. So there you go. But when you are going to visit, you do the information session. If you can plan to do the information session before you do the tour, a lot of times certain questions might come up specific to that school that then you will have, that then you can ask the tour guide or ask admissions later on. The tours, when you are going out, if you go out over April vacation, those tours will be very, very busy. It's a huge time for everybody in the country, all juniors, to go looking at colleges, sometimes even sophomores. So planning ahead does help because then you get the times that you want. When you are on a tour, what will happen is you will have a student like a Jason who's real peppy and knows everything and is going to totally sell you on that wonderful school. Your child may or may not walk with you. My older son would have nothing to do with me when we went on tours because I was that obnoxious person who would sort of stand near the tour guide and kind of ask questions like, so where else were you thinking of going and why did you decide to go to this school? What do kids complain about? What do you do? What's your typical weekend look like? Now, my son wouldn't ask anything. My younger son, the one who's now floating on an island, he was like, Mom, you didn't tell him you were a guidance counselor. Why aren't you asking those questions? I'd be like, well, Michael, you can ask them the same questions. One of the best questions I ever heard on a tour was from another parent who said to the tour guide, if I gave you $1 million, what would you do to invest in your school or to change something? And then I found out that the school we were at needed a new student center. So it's those kind of questions, and we give you a bunch of them, and one of the things is as you're talking with your daughter or son, ask them what's important to them. We really talk about fit because you can look at these, well, maybe not Worcester State's beautiful virtual tour, but you're looking at beautiful virtual tours. It's always sunny. Everybody's happy. Everybody's out there throwing frisbees and stuff. So the virtual tour is great because everything looks perfect. But it's when you get on that campus. All of a sudden, if you go to BU, your kid might have said, or maybe they said, I've always wanted to be in New York. I want to go to NYU. And they go to NYU. They see all these big towers. They're hearing all the traffic. They're seeing all the people bouncing up against each other. And all of a sudden, they're like, yeah, no, I really liked UMass. That was a really nice campus. And the only way you really know that is to go out and ask. It is a very stressful time for you and your kids, but it is also a really cool time, especially if you're going to travel someplace. It's time, go out on the campus, go into that student center, get a cup of coffee or a hot chocolate, eat some food there, find out what other food options are. If you can, have your kid's probably not going to talk to a student walking by, but you can be that obnoxious parent and you can ask that kid, so what made you choose this school? I one day went down to Salve Regina. I was supposed to be at a professional development day. This was before you were director. And it was a horrible professional development day, and it was in, I don't know where, but I drove down to Newport, got some really good soup, and decided I'd walk over to Salve Regina, because my view of Salve Regina, one summer when I lived in a mansion working at a restaurant in Newport, I thought Salve Regina was a beautiful place, but I figured, oh yeah, it's just rich, yuppie kids who, you know, what do they know? It's got to be very expensive. It's in mansions. It was a rainy day. It was a crappy day. And I walked around that campus and started just stopping kids, not all the time outside because it was raining. Sometimes I'd do it in a building, but I talked to kids who were freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. And I must have talked about 10 different kids. Not a single one had anything bad to say about that school. My whole impression of that school changed so much after talking to these random kids. And it's hard to ask these questions, but the more you can ask, one thing about tours though, you can have a crappy tour guide. I did have a tour guide who once yelled at me, and so that sort of changed my view of the campus. But I had talked to the tour guide's friends who had joined the tour guide, and I thought that they were really lovely. So I still will recommend that school to other kids. Don't let that tour guide ruin your feel or your kids' feel of a school. You can always go back. Jason had touched on some websites that will tell you whether or not interviews are recommended or required. All your big schools are not going to have interviews, but some of your smaller schools will. I would say right now, where you guys are at, not a great time to go your first college tour, do an interview at the same time. Might be way stressful for your child. But if you are traveling, say to Colorado or something, and you know that you're not going to get back there and you're going to my alma mater, University of Denver. If you guys don't want to go, I will take your children, so that's okay. Where's Linda Hurley? I told your daughter. Yeah, I said, don't have your parents take you, I'll go. But if you're going to do an interview, we can set up for your student here a mock interview with Linda Hutchins in our Career Resource Center, and we do try and get most of the juniors in the spring to go through a mock interview. But if your student knows that they're going out on an interview, we can set them up so with certain interview questions. If you are traveling to California or Colorado or something, you might want to go to a local college and do a practice interview, not you yourselves, your kid. But while your student is in that interview, that's a good time for you guys to go over and talk to financial aid. Find out what kind of scholarships. Geez, do they give merit money based on certain test scores or something? And that's where these graphs can really help you. The other way to look, besides just going out to big colleges, is there are these national college fairs, and there is one in Boston at some point, right? It's here. Anybody here ever work a trade show? Go in, see a bunch of stuff. Okay, gets a little overwhelming. Before I was this, I used to sell and do stuff in trade shows. You get a lot of cool toys, but these college fairs, the big Boston one, they're huge. So if you are going to a college fair, you want to have your student identify which schools that they want to go visit and talk to. So they don't want to go talk to UMass. They don't want to talk to BU or Worcester State, because those are schools they can easily see from where we live. But let's say they were really thinking of going down to South Carolina and wanted to find out more about Clemson or something. That's a place to go. You put your name on the mailing list, you talk to the admissions counselor, your student does some research before they go to these college fairs. Maybe they have a specific question for that admissions rep. These admissions rep, the people who are out here visiting schools, those are the ones who most likely are going to be reading your child's application, and they remember this stuff. If you are visiting a college because your student's friend or cousin is at that college, and let's say they're going on a day where admissions is closed, still have them email admissions and let them know that they visited, let them get on their mailing list. They do keep track of all this stuff, and it can make a difference if your student's applying and another student is applying. Everything looks the same, but they see that this kid had a lot of interest. That gives them points, and points help them get in. Did I miss anything? Kate, I forgot what you were talking about, but have a good time.
All right, so I'm actually going to talk about course selection. So So I'm on page 13 in your workbook. So this isn't your student's first time going through course selection. However, it is the first time going through course selection when they're a senior or about to be a senior. So when choosing courses for next year, students should continue to take a rigorous course load as much as they want to kind of, take their foot off the gas a little bit. But they really want to keep up that rigorous course load, especially in their core courses going into their senior year, as colleges will still review their schedule and often their first and second quarter grades as well before making a decision on the student's application. So students should take at least 4 of the 5 major academics. So say a student chooses to not take a foreign language next year, they should still take a lab science, a math, English, and social studies class. As Pam mentioned earlier, their potential, when building their potential senior schedule, students will want to make sure that they've completed or are planning to complete our requirements in order to graduate, like economics and a fine or applied arts. And they should also make room for their senior PE class as well. So as they're making their mock schedule, make sure you're leaving room for that and you're checking off that you've completed all of our requirements here. Many colleges require 4 years of a math, including all of the Massachusetts state colleges and universities. That is a requirement. So students should continue to take a math class their senior year. Colleges will also often ask students to take a math placement exam. So again, the more math that they have, the fresher that it is, it's just going to be helpful in the long run. So again, we do encourage 4 years of math. Students should also take courses that align with their potential college major if they have something in mind. So say a student's interested in nursing, they might want to look into physiology, maybe AP biology. It's important that they take the course of the appropriate rigor. So senior year is a good time to explore electives that they may not have had an opportunity to take the previous years. So again, maybe they're potentially considering a major in business. We have a ton of business electives, so, take a look at those. You might want to take marketing, maybe just the intro to business course. Again, this is also a time, maybe your students always wanted to take wood tech. It's never fit into their schedule. Now's the time to take those elective courses while still keeping up the rigor of your schedule. Colleges want to make sure you're continuing to take a balanced schedule. So again, balancing those electives along with their rigorous core courses. And it's important that the students work with their teachers around the recommendations. You guys have been doing this for a couple years now, so listening to what the teacher recommends along with what you want to take. The teacher knows the student well. They know, how they're performing currently in the class, and they also know the rigor of the course, what the course entails, of the one that they want to go into. So again, listen to the teacher and what they're recommending. So as I mentioned earlier, Massachusetts state schools and universities require students to complete 4 years of a math. And if you're wondering what the other requirements are, or the recommendations are, Connor showed that earlier in the Naviance section. So when you go into the admissions tab, you'll find what schools are requiring and recommending to take. For example, UConn requires 2 years of a foreign language, but they recommend 3. So a student interested in UConn should obviously meet the requirements, but they should go above and beyond and really try to meet that recommended course. So again, when signing up for their senior year schedule, students should look at the schools they're potentially interested in to make sure they're meeting those admission requirements. Again, the college's website is the best source of information, so as Jason showed earlier, log on to that college website and make sure that Naviance is kind of lining up with the college's website. Students should note that course selection begins on March 5th, and it's due March 16th. So that's everything on page 13, and page 14 just kind of goes over what Lisa Connery mentioned earlier, the admissions counselor panel. And as Becca just mentioned, the national fairs in the spring, so the Springfield National Fair, Providence, and the Boston Fair. These are excused absences, I believe they are. So it's a great opportunity to go and see those schools that are a little bit farther away. They are during the week, but again, some are during the school day, and then there is usually an evening session as well. So again, great opportunity to go see some of those schools that you may not be able to just drive to. So next up is the question and answer.
Well, we weight our GPA because it's based on the level of course that you take. So we have college prep level courses, we have honors courses, and we have AP courses, okay? So based on the rigor of the course that you take, we weight that accordingly based off our grading scale, okay? So we do it because we have different levels of courses. Several of the counselors have talked about, they showed you the graphs and everything on Naviance. So that is the best data to use. So you don't have to worry about any unweighted GPA, because all of the data that is in Naviance is relevant to, on the graphs and stuff, is relevant to Algonquin students who are on the same grading scale as your student is, all right? So you'll use that admissions data when you're assessing the potential for admission to that school for your student, okay?
On the SAT, the subject tests, how does that compare to kids who are taking AP tests? Would you do one over the other or not?
So the AP test is actually, no, sorry. Can you guys hear me? Okay. The AP test is going to be given in May, and that's going to be to show mastery of the course that they've taken. So for example, let's say that your student is in AP chemistry. They're going to take that AP chemistry class, AP chemistry exam in May. They're very different. The colleges don't actually see the AP. They don't really look at them until the student gets in. They can report the scores, but they usually use them to waive a requirement. So if AP Chem is a requirement for a program, they would then ask for actual official copies of the AP test. The subject tests are different. It's a little confusing in that they sometimes cover different material. So notoriously, we have kids that are in AP World. The AP exam and the subject are very, very different. Insofar that I feel like a lot of kids struggle on the subject. But Mr. Tutor will talk about that if your kid is not in class. He can talk about the differences in the exam. Does that answer your question?
So the subject tests are part of the admissions process, okay, if a school requires them. Where the AP, they're going to, if you're taking AP exams and AP courses, they're going to consider that as part of your course rigor. And then once you have, like Pam said, once you have been admitted to a school, you then would submit AP scores for potential credit, college credit for that course.
Do we have other questions?
Any question? Okay. Testing. Testing? No. What's your question?
Oh, the scatter plot showed GPA.
Yeah.
And that's 4 years GPA.
So the blue, which is your student, your child, is going to be 9th and 10th grade right now. The GPA that you're seeing that's on there is all 3 years. It's all 3 years, or is it 4? Yeah, it's just the 3 years. So it's 9, 10, 11. It's not the final GPA. It's the GPA that they were accepted with. Do you follow? Okay. Do you guys hear that? Okay.
I think someone right over there also had a did you mention? Other questions?
So my question is in regards to the Naviance. So when we got the list of the colleges, there was 2 fields, 2 columns. One was saying that the number of students applied, another one was the number of students accepted. So the question I have is that numbers taken from last 3 years, or is it since the school was established?
Last 3 years.
Last 3 years.
Last 3 years,
Okay.
yeah. The data that isn't, the data that's utilized for the graphs, and that's saying number of students who applied, number of students accepted, number of students who decided to attend, is based on the past 3 years. Class of 2015, 16, and 17. Of course, class of 2018 isn't in there yet because we're still here, they're in the middle of the process right now. But next fall, they'll be in there. We have one question back here.
Could you what it was that they had, they could get an excused absent for?
Oh, Kate was talking about if, could I repeat what they can have an excused absence for? Kate was talking about if you decided to go, say, to one of the national fairs, like in Boston or Providence, that you know, could be an excused absence from school. Okay.
Okay, that's a good question. Did everybody hear that? He was asking about your students taking the SAT in March. Our kind of rule of thumb with that is if your child is in higher level math, if they're taking pre-calc right now, then they should be good to go for March. Otherwise, we kind of suggest that students wait because they'll have a stronger math background and they'll actually have more vocabulary. A lot of the junior English classes are also covering SAT vocab. So that's why we say May, and that's why we say June, that's why we say to hold off, which you could certainly do March if you like. Yeah.
Did everybody?
Yes.
Sure.
Oh, sure. Okay. So it's interesting, you know, the way we open up the workshops with the kids is that we tell them that this is not a one-size-fits-all process. We're speaking about four-year schools because that's the majority of where our kids end up doing. We do have information on gap years. It kind of depends what kind of experience the child is trying to get. We do recommend that students go ahead and apply to schools regularly and then defer a year. That's kind of the strategy that we suggest. And then we can help find, you know, work opportunities, travel. There's some really cool things. There's City Year, there's Dynamy, which is in Worcester. So we can talk to them one-on-one about it. So you can talk to your kids' guidance counselor about it. We can help. Yes?
Is there a set number of days, excuse absences kids have to visit schools during the year? I mean,
I'm going to be honest, I don't know off the top of my head what the exact number is. I think my suggestion would be to try to utilize February and April break as well as summer, you know. But anytime you do go to visit a campus, if it is during the school day, I would just ask that you get a note, you know, just grab a note from the admissions office and have your student bring it in when they come back in, you know, to the attendance office, okay? So I guess my thing is going to be use your best judgment based on your student, and of course if they haven't missed any days of school and you have a couple days where you're off, you know, visiting colleges, just bring something in from the campus, letting them know you're actually there. Because I think you'd be surprised at the number of our seniors who might be 18 years old who are still visiting college campuses. Other questions? Okay, so what would you Okay, so he asked me if I could talk for a moment. He saw on Naviance. So if you were to look under colleges I'm thinking about, where we added a couple schools, we had added, what we had, Worcester State and Boston College. He was saying how we'll be going over a lot of this stuff more in May and more in the fall, but this is a nice place to kind of keep yourself organized. It tells you what type of application the school takes, whether it takes the Common App or it has its own application, and then it offers, you know, application deadlines. It lets you know whether the school has an early decision program, early action, regular decision, and this gentleman was asking me to explain the difference. Of course, early decision is a binding agreement, okay? So your student really should love the school, want to go to the school, and for the most part, you should have had a pretty real conversation, a pretty honest conversation with them about finances, okay? And then you guys have all of the conversation, you decide, you know what, this is my #1 school, I want to apply there. And so your student decides to apply early decision. They do have to sign an agreement that indicates that if they are accepted to the school, that they will attend. And that's what I mean by binding. So that means if they're accepted, they're going to attend, and then you would rescind your applications to other schools. Now, early action allows you to apply early, you hear back early, but you don't have to make your decision until May 1st, okay? So that will allow for students, you know, for some students, they like to hear back from a few of their schools early on, helps kind of reduce the anxiety, they know they're in. But yet financially, you don't have to make a final decision until all of your decisions are in and all of your financial aid letters are in, okay? Regular decision, of course, you would apply typically January 1, January 15, right? You'd hear back in late March whether or not you're accepted, and then you would decide by May 1st whether or not you're going to go. Okay?
Yes.
I've heard that Massachusetts residents can get in-state tuition in other states in the middle, not just Massachusetts. So
That's true, so there's a catch, of course. So he was saying, he had a question about tuition breaks. So there is a program with other state schools. I don't know all the info off the top of my head. But if you are looking at a major that we do not have at our Massachusetts state schools, but they offer it at an out-of-state school, and you go with that major, then you could get Massachusetts tuition.
I mean, it's not straight state tuition. I think it's about a 25% break in the tuition. So it's called the New England Regional Tuition Program. You can Google it, it will come up and it will list all the different schools in the area that participate and, you know, what majors. You know, so if we don't offer it in Massachusetts, where you could go to get that major, but I think it's about 25%. Is that right, Beck? Yeah.
Versus Maine is state tuition matching Massachusetts now.
Nice. That's awesome. Yes.
A lot of us that are, they'll big match.
We're matching.
From schools.
What's that? Yeah, either or. And so when we talked about testing at the beginning, you know, we're recommending that students take, you know, both exams and then assess their scores to see if they perform better on one exam over the other. And then if in fact they do, then in the fall they would retake that preferred test one more time. Okay? Yep. Other questions? Well, that's in Naviance. Yeah, so it tells you where they've been accepted. Okay? So you can look up all the individual schools and look at what the admissions data is looking like. Okay. And I think if there's no other questions, I think Julie Schwimbeck from APTO would like to say something really quick. If you guys could just give her a moment, that'd be awesome.
Thank you very much, Lisa. I am here to talk to you about, or mention, the junior post-prom party that is put on by the by concerned citizens and the APTO sponsorship. It's happening on the night of prom, which is 5/19 to 5/20, from 12 midnight to 5 a.m. It is, the purpose of the party is to give kids a substance-free, safe, supervised alternative to whatever else they might be doing after prom. It's in its 24th year. In the past, it's been no cost. We solicit donations from the community and from concerned parents, which makes it sound like a cost, but it is a donation. It's happening at the New England Sports Center, and they have a DJ and hypnotist and food and more, and the kids have a blast, and they really enjoy it. So you'll be receiving information about it, but that's what it's like. Please talk it up with your students and their guests, because it's a really good activity, a really good alternative for them after prom. Thanks. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. Okay, great. So that concludes our evening. We look forward to seeing you on January 31st for our admissions panel at 7:30 in the morning. It's going to be a great opportunity. You can ask them some additional questions from their perspective. And you can feel free to reach out to us, email us with any questions that you might have, okay? We look forward to working with you guys. Have a great night.